Hey everybody, listen, nobody wants to pay a penny more than they have to when it comes to sending a Bitcoin transaction. But have you ever sent a Bitcoin transaction only to watch it get stuck for hours or even days because you were too cheap to set a reasonable fee, or worse, the fee spiked as soon as you pressed the send button? Of course. Today we're exploring Bitcoin's Replace by Fee feature, or RBF, the solution that could save your next urgent transaction. If that sounds good, let's get to it. So what exactly is Replace by Fee? Well, it's pretty much exactly what it sounds like. It's a feature that lets you replace an unconfirmed Bitcoin transaction with a new version that pays a higher fee. You can think of the Bitcoin mempool as a waiting room where transactions sit before miners include them in a block. When the waiting room gets crowded, the transactions with the highest fees get priority. RBF basically lets you upgrade your seat by replacing your transaction with one paying a higher fee. Get it? So now that you know what RBF is, let's talk about exactly when you might need to use it. Here are 3 common situations where RBF comes in handy. Number 1, if your transaction is stuck with a low fee during times of congestion. Number 2, if network fees suddenly spike right after you sent the transaction and you need it to go through sooner than later. And the third scenario is if you need to speed up a really important transaction and you can't wait for regular confirmation. In other words, you need it confirmed right now. Before RBF, your only option was to just wait, sometimes for even days at a time. Now with RBF, you have control. Let's take a peek under the hood to see how this works technically. I promise this will only take a minute. Think of RBF like setting a replaceable flag on your transaction. Technically, this happens by setting a special value, the sequence number, on at least one transaction input, or UTXO, to below a certain threshold. Many wallets handle this automatically when you check the Enable RBF button or Enable Transaction Acceleration. Incidentally, the Sparrow Wallet enables this by default, which is why you don't see any Enable RBF box to check. When creating a replacement transaction, there are 3 strict rules. It must pay a higher absolute fee. It must also pay for its own bandwidth and the bandwidth of the transaction it's replacing. It also can't introduce any unconfirmed inputs that weren't there in the first place. And you must pay a higher fee rate than all the transactions that it's replacing if you're doing this more than once. These rules ensure that the system can't be abused and that miners have incentives to include your replacement transaction. Okay, let's go through sort of a real-world made-up scenario where someone might actually use RBF in the real-world setting. So meet Alice. She wants to send 0.1 Bitcoin to Bob to pay for a used car. The network is relatively calm, so she sets a fee of approximately 1,000 sats, which is only $1. Incidentally, the fees on the Bitcoin blockchain are not equivalent to the amount of Bitcoin you're sending, but they're equivalent to the size of the transaction, which has nothing to do with the amount of Bitcoin you're sending. So Alice goes ahead and creates a transaction, sending 0.1 Bitcoin to Bob's address, setting the fee at 1,000 sats, and she checks the RBF box on her wallet. She broadcasts the transaction and shows Bob the phone and says, "We're all set." And Bob says, "Okay, well, I'll just wait for it to get one confirmation, and then you're good to go." Unfortunately, as soon as she sends the transaction, network congestion suddenly spikes. Her transaction sits unconfirmed for hours as miners prioritize higher-paying transactions. Alice checks mempool.space and sees that the recommended fee for a transaction her size is now about 15,000 sats. She doesn't want to keep Bob waiting any longer, so Alice decides to create a whole new transaction to replace the first one. She uses the same 0.1 Bitcoin, sets a new fee of 18,000 sats, and references the same inputs as the first transaction. Essentially, it is the same as the first transaction except with a higher fee. When the miners see transaction B, they replace the transaction A, the first one, with the transaction B in their mempool, and her payment to Bob gets confirmed in the next block. This is important to understand. Alice isn't editing her original transaction. She's creating an entirely new transaction that spends the same inputs or the same UTXOs. When miners see transaction B, they replace transaction A in their mempool because of the RBF signaling, and therefore her payment to Bob gets confirmed in the next block. I hope you followed that potential real-world example, and it sounds straightforward enough, but nothing beats seeing it in action. Now let's see if this works in practice using the Sparrow Wallet. This is the one time in one video that I've ever wished for a higher fee. I'm hoping the fees are not 1 or 2 sats per fee byte, but rather 4 or 5 or 6 or 7, hopefully. Let's go ahead and check it out. Okay, here we are in my demo wallet. You can see there's a whole bunch of history of transactions down here. And up here, I still have $11.24 left in the wallet. And if you look down here, I am connected to my own node for maximum privacy. And I like to support the Bitcoin network, as many of you know. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a transaction using the send button. So I'm going to click that here. And I already have an address pasted in here. And we're going to label it home. And we're going to send all or max amount of sats to that address. The suggested fee for this transaction is 4 sats per VByte. That's what they have this set at. These are the latest blocks in the mempool, which is a brand new feature in Sparrow Wallet, which is pretty cool. You can also see the mempool size and target blocks. You can set your fee based on what block you'd like to be in. And what we'd like to do is I'm going to deliberately set a fee that is too low to get into this block. And then we're going to look at the transaction on the blockchain. So what we're going to do is we're going to reduce this all the way down to 1 sat per VByte. A total fee of 12 cents to send $11. That's great. We're going to create a transaction. Oh, by the way, I don't know if you noticed this changing when I slid this. Low priority, medium priority, high priority, which means it's likely going to be included in the first block. And they won't let me set a fee that's too high. So we're going to lower this back down and put it down here. Watch those words change. Watch this change again. As I slide this to the left, it says try transaction, then replace. It's already thinking we're going to need to replace it. Perfect. Let's create the transaction. But quick, before I do this, this wallet is a watch-only wallet, so I'm going to need to sign the transaction with my hardware wallet. We're going to do so in an air-gapped manner, so you'll get to see that as well. Let's go back to the transaction, create the transaction. I'm going to set up the hardware wallet real quick, and I'll be right back. Okay, let's go ahead and finalize this transaction for signing. Press this button. I'm going to show the QR and then scan it with the Blockstream Jade I have. There we go. Now I'm going to scan the QR on the Jade. Done. And then I'm going to broadcast the transaction through my node, and we are good to go. Okay, let's go ahead and check this transaction on mempool.space and see where it is. I'm going to copy this transaction ID from up here, and we're going to head over to mempool.space and see what's going on. All right, here we are at the transaction, and it is really low priority. We are way out of line here. This string of squares at the top here represents the Bitcoin blockchain. This is our transaction information. And as you can see, our fee was 1 sat per VByte, or 12 cents. And the miners sent us to the back of the room. This transaction is not going to get confirmed for a month, but we know how to use RBF. So let's go back to the Sparrow wallet and see if we can increase the fee on this transaction. All right, I'm going to close this, and we're going to look at our transaction list. We're going to go to our list of transactions, and we're going to hover over this top transaction here, and I'm going to right-click right here. It says increase fee, RBF. You can cancel the transaction as well if you want, but which is something that is really important. If you send the transaction to the wrong person or the wrong address or something gets screwed up and you realize it before it's confirmed and it's in the mempool, you can pull it out essentially, but not after it's confirmed. So we're going to click increase fee, RBF, and it pre-fills in all of our information here and even increases the fee for us to a higher priority. The fee for the current block is approximately 3 sats per VByte. And let's go ahead and raise this up. And now, I don't know if you can see this, but watch this number. As we increase our fee, the amount that gets delivered to the recipient is lowered. You see that? That's pretty cool. The wallet is empty. So, oh my gosh, there's no Bitcoin in there to pay for a higher fee. We don't need it. It's simply pulled out of the amount that's sent in the transaction, which is super neat. So we're going to go ahead and increase this fee to a high priority, which is 4 sats per VByte, or all of 44 cents. We're going to create the transaction again. We're going to finalize this one for signing, and we're going to show the QR. I'm going to scan it with the Jade, confirm the transaction, and then scan the QR from the Jade. Broadcast it to the network. And now we're going to head over to the transaction that we were just looking at in mempool.space and check it out. Oh, wow. Look at that. This transaction has been replaced by this number. So this is the sort of address or resting place of the first transaction, which was down in the block all the way down to in the end here. It's been replaced by this transaction, which I'm going to click. And what do you know? Look where we are. We're right in the front of the first block. High priority VIP seating in the mempool waiting room. Awesome. We did it. Incidentally, that transaction I sent, let's go ahead and look at the mempool again, just got confirmed. So our transaction has been confirmed and is now in the row of blocks that have been confirmed. It's not final until the 6th block. Okay, it has to be confirmed 6 times before it's a finalized transaction. You can't reverse it at this point, but it's not final. Okay, where was I? And that is how you replace a transaction with a higher fee using the Sparrow Wallet. It couldn't be easier. It's not super intuitive, but once you get the hang of it, it's amazing. You have such control over the priority of your transaction. It's really neat. And you don't have to guess at what fee you set anymore if you're using Sparrow Wallet. Just set a fee lower than you might want to, and then see where it ends up. If it's not getting confirmed, just bump it up a little bit. Of course, not everything about RBF is perfect, and it's worth looking at some of the debate around this feature. Some people or merchants who accept Bitcoin worry about transaction reversals before confirmation. However, this isn't a security vulnerability. It's just how the Bitcoin mempool works. Most wallets now warn merchants not to accept unconfirmed transactions because until they are confirmed, they can be reversed or canceled. And many exchanges even wait for multiple confirmations before crediting your account with a transfer. So you're convinced RBF is useful. Now let's make sure you can actually use it in your wallet of choice. Modern Bitcoin wallets like Blue Wallet, Electrum, Ledger Live, Trezor Suite, or even Nunchuck all support RBF. And I'm sure many more do as well. When sending a transaction, look for an option labeled Replace by Fee or Transaction Acceleration, and make sure it is enabled. By default, all transactions created in Sparrow Wallet are designed to be Replace by Fee compatible, which is a very smart approach, and one of the reasons I love the Sparrow Wallet. There you have it, folks. The power of RBF in your hands. Replace by Fee puts you back in control of all of your Bitcoin transactions. By understanding how it works, you'll never stress about a stuck transaction again. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to hit subscribe and the like button, and leave a comment about your stuck transactions in the comments below. I'd love to hear the stories. And if this information was super useful, you can buy me a Bitcoin beer with the link in the description below. Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it, and I will see you in the next video.